Zen at the Sharp End. Welcome to the podcast about how to turn difficult people and relationships into your best teachers. I'm Mark Westmackett, a Zen Buddhist teacher, mindfulness teacher, and ex-professional astronomer. This is a podcast to go along with my latest book, Zen and the Art of Dealing with Difficult People, which is out now and available to order in all the usual places. In each episode, we'll be exploring different varieties of people, relationships and situations that we find irritating, difficult or painful. Together with a number of Zen friends, I'll be discussing how the practices of Buddhism and mindfulness can help us see our difficult people as troublesome Buddhas, our greatest teachers. This podcast is sponsored by Zen Minded, an online lifestyle store offering you the very best in Japanese craft, incense and other Zen-inspired home goods. Check it out at www.zenminded.uk. So welcome, Sophie. Thank you so much for joining us today and being willing to talk about your troublesome Buddha's experiences and things. Maybe just to start us off, perhaps you could talk a little bit about your experience with Zen and, what got you into it and what kind of things you found along the way.
Yeah, sure. When I do talk to people about how I discovered Zen and Zenways specifically, I sort of say that Zenways found me rather than I found Zenways, which is kind of how it feels. I was working for a mental health charity 5 or 6 years ago, and they had somebody working there who'd actually trained with Zenways and was teaching the mindfulness meditation course, and that was how I first heard of Zenways. I hadn't heard of Zenways then, so sort of looked you up on the internet and found out about you. And then that person was due to retire, and so the charity that I was working for offered to train a couple of us up to become mindfulness meditation teachers to take the place of the person that was leaving. And I nearly didn't do the training because I wasn't particularly into Zen at the time. I didn't know much about it. I sort of thought it was religious. I wasn't sure it was my thing. And I literally left it till the last day I could before making the decision to come on the training. Because eventually I thought, they're giving me the time off. They're paying me half the money. I want to be a mindfulness meditation teacher. Why would I say no? But so I came, and that's where I met you. I kind of haven't looked back really, but it's been so I came to it for the mindfulness meditation particularly, and sort of have discovered the Zen stuff along the way. And the more I've done with Zenways, the more I've got from it. Each time I've done training or been on a retreat or one of the other events that you organise, I always come away with some better understanding or insight, or having had a really positive experience. So I've just gradually over the last 5 years really got more and more involved with Zenways, and now done the yoga teacher training and started going on retreats. And if you'd have told me 6 years ago that I'd want to go on a silent 5-day meditation retreat, I'm not sure I'd have said that was what I was up for. But yeah, obviously I'm in a different place now.
Yeah. So when do you think was the first time you came across this phrase troublesome Buddhas or troublesome Buddha?
So I was thinking, I'm not actually quite sure. But since the time with Zenways, I think sort of heard it mentioned in the background a couple of times, and got the sense of what it was, but didn't really sort of think about it in particular for myself, or that there were troublesome Buddhas in my life. But it's sort of just gradually become more aware of it. And I suppose really when you started researching for your book, that was probably when I really sort of stopped and thought about it, when you were asking for people who might want to have stories. That made me sit down and think, have I got anything here? Is this relevant to me? And then got in touch with you with a couple of examples.
And what does it come to mean? Like if someone, like right now, if I say, what is a troublesome Buddha? What's it come to mean for you?
People who can teach us something about ourselves, where the problem in inverted commas might seem to be that person, but that actually when we stop and look, we find out that a part of it is how we react to that person, and it's to do with what's going in us and inside us, and not necessarily so much that person. And even if people are very difficult, that we still have a choice in how we actually relate to them and how we deal with
Mm.
situations if we have to deal with them, if they're not somebody we can just walk away from.
Yeah. Okay. So, what about some particular examples where you've found, difficult people, and particularly around what have you learned, from that experience?
Hmm.
Is there anything that
Um,
jumps up into your mind straight away?
well, yeah, I mean, I often say when I'm sort of teaching mindfulness and stuff that it's often the people that we're closest to that we can the ones that are the hardest that we can find sometimes to
Yeah.
apply this stuff to. So sort of my family, my son and my husband are the two that come to mind first, and my older son, who's now 23, a good number of years ago, when he was still fairly young, probably in his early teens, um, he would I would be busy being a busy mum in the house, doing the washing, the cooking, everything that you do to try and keep a household going. And he would be trying to distract me and being silly and wanting me to watch silly videos and this kind of thing. And I went through a phase where I was really just like, I haven't got time yet. No, you go and do it. Watch it with your brother. I'm busy doing this. I'm busy doing that. And at some point realized that he was actually asking me to spend quality time with him, watching something that was funny, that made us laugh. And so I sort of started sitting down watching these videos with them. They're called Fail Army. It's just clips of people normally falling over and injuring themselves, or
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so we started watching them together, and it actually then became like a nice bit of family time and something, a time out from all the busyness and the role of being a mum. um, I was very sort of fixated on that, rather than actually part of that is having quality time with my kids. Not that I didn't have quality time with them, but
Mm.
so we started watching it, and then my younger son and my husband joined in, and it became a really nice family thing that we all did together. But there was this initial resistance to it, which was me blocking it basically and not wanting it
Mm.
to happen because I thought I had better things to do.
Mm.
And
Mm.
even I don't know, however many years on it is now, we still have our favorite clips, and when we're together we put them down and we just laugh hysterically. We watch the same thing over and over and over
Yeah.
again, and the more you watch it the funnier it gets. So we're
Yeah.
still kind of
Yeah.
still checking in with it.
So that's so interesting, because that was I'm guessing that happened all before you started practicing Zen, and
Yeah,
before maybe even the recognition of what a troublesome Buddha is and all that stuff.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, can you? How did that come about? Obviously, then maybe there's a lesson there about, well, we don't need to be meditating, for us to be able to recognize these things and find, learning and growing through it.
Yeah, I think thinking about it, I think the time it clicked that it was something of value to be doing and watching these videos was actually because it was me and my older son for a while. My husband queried us one day that should we really be doing this? Hadn't we got better things to do with our time? And I
Mm.
remember it actually a little bit of like, actually no, like this is a good use of our time. You come and watch it as well. And he was a bit resistant until we sort of got him into it. So it was him questioning us when I and made me stop and think, no, actually this is a good thing.
Mm. 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 And in terms of how things have been since then, I mean, are there moments where you can apply that learning in maybe different situations where it's like, oh, I'm getting a bit uptight or whatever, and maybe I need to, have a bit of a joke around?
Very much more so. Very much more so. I'm definitely much more capable of um, keeping humour in things, even when I'm frustrated with stuff. And in fact, my husband's one of the other people who is one of my favourite troublesome Buddhas.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, we have a log store, and we have this constant. Well, I've made it a joke basically, is that I'm quite organised and tidy, and if I'm organising the log store, it's all neat and tidy, and if my husband's involved in it, it's higgledy-piggledy and stuff thrown everywhere, and you can't easily get to the sticks or the wood.
Right.
And we used to argue about it, and I used to get really quite mad, and I still get a bit frustrated, but I don't allow myself to like have an argument or fight, and I've managed to make a bit light of that. And whenever we're out and about anywhere and I see really nice log stores, of which there are many all over the place, I take photos of them and send them to him. Yeah, I got a bit cross the other day because he'd chucked a load of stuff in again. But again, I managed to make a joke out of it and basically said I was going to go and build myself one in the garden somewhere else and put a padlock on it, and he wasn't allowed to touch it, and he could have his log store and I could have my log store. But
Yeah.
it's the kind of stuff that I would have got really angry about before, and we would have had arguments about, and I would have sulked for days at his sort of non-compliance, whereas I'm much more able to keep it in perspective, keep it in context. It's not the end of the world.
So what do you think then has been the process, in allowing you to make that shift between becoming frustrated and now allowing it more to be okay?
Well, since I really sort of, I had a bit of a mindfulness practice before I started with Zenways, and I did meditate, but it's obviously I've upped my game since then and taken it more sort of seriously and done more stuff. And just over that time period, I think for me, it's just gradually becoming more and more aware of what's me and what's a reaction, and what happens when we take a mindful pause and be able to sort of have that space where we can stop and think and realize we've got a choice in how we behave. And I think particularly when you stop behaving a certain way, like stop being really angry and frustrated and shouty at everything, how that affects people and the feedback people give you as to how different you are. And then the realization that you can find a much more constructive way forward when it comes to family disagreements, which inevitably happen in a family. There's a bit of compromise there, isn't there? And seeing what happens when you do things differently. So this subject came up again, but instead of me stomping about and being cross, I made light of it, or I made a joke of it, or I stayed calm and asked questions rather than just stayed that sense of being mindful and staying open and curious, and asking lots more questions, I think, is one of the things that's changed me, rather than jumping to conclusions about things and assuming certain things or assuming people are thinking a certain way. Gradually doing that and seeing the difference in myself and seeing the difference in how you communicate around difficult situations, basically, and realizing that being angry and frustrated and sulking doesn't make things better, generally makes things worse. And that I think that noticing the need to be right and wanting to be right about stuff.
Oh yeah, that old chestnut.
Yeah, I'm not always right, and I do know that. I'm quite often right, but
I bought my wife this. That she was looking for a new mug a couple of Christmases ago, and she wanted a nice sizable one that wasn't too thick and heavy. And I found one in a shop, and that's a great one. I got it for her, and I hadn't realised that printed around the rim, "I'm always right" was written there. And she's always been like, "Right, you told me, I've got it now."
Brilliant.
Yeah. But it is an interesting sort of thing, isn't it, when we come to the realization that some of these I don't know, like thoughts or perceptions that we have that arise around certain situations. It's like, oh, actually, I'd always thought that I was in the right and that I've
Mm.
got the right view, but
Mm.
actually maybe not, Mm.
Mm. Yeah, that was definitely a learning experience for me, and being able to let go of that need to be right, or to just allow that possibility, that just that sense of like, there's a possibility that I'm not right about this. There's a possibility, and that allows you
Mm.
to sort of take that slight step back and think, right, okay, I can say what I want to
Mm.
say, but just bear in mind, um, and every now and then I am wrong, and I'm more than happy to say I'm wrong and apologize for being wrong. Um,
Yeah, it seems important, in the process to, it's very easy. We end up in this stance where like you're wrong and I'm right, like it's very hard and distinctive.
mm,
But just to entertain the possibility that
mm.
you may be wrong, even, whether you are or not, doesn't matter. But just to entertain that possibility is already quite a shift, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Mm.
definitely for me. I think it's that thing that helps me particularly.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a small thing, but it's a big thing at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
I suppose the only other one that did come up for me is again my husband, but they say that there are various things that people tend to argue about in relationships, aren't they? And one of them is money. Um, and I've definitely Adrian was definitely a very troublesome Buddha around money for a very long time,
Oh.
and
Mm.
I was just reflecting the other day that um, yeah, we came from very different backgrounds with different styles of upbringing and different attitudes to money. Although neither of us came from desperately poor or desperately wealthy families or anything like that. Um, but Adrian's got some very, very strong views around money, which I don't have, and is very conscientious about it, and has been brought up to believe a lot of things are very important around how you behave with money, how you save,
Mm.
how you spend, all this kind of thing, which I didn't have. I didn't have the same kind of level of, I don't know what you'd say, importance attached to it as
Mm.
he did. And so money's caused us a lot of arguments over the years. And um, as part of my practice, that being open and curious and asking questions, it's allowed me to understand a lot better about why he's like he is and what he thinks is important, because he doesn't necessarily always articulate things, and I will assume a certain set of behavior means something, and actually it doesn't.
Mm.
He's just concerned for the future and concerned for our pensions and concerned for stuff, but it comes across as him being very militant around money. And
Mm.
so I've managed to get to understand him much better and persuade him to understand me too, because I think as a team we work quite well. He
Mm.
wants to save and I want to spend, but we meet somewhere in the middle and we do a bit of both.
Mm. Mm.
And so that's allowed us to not argue about money and be able to have meetings about money without falling out, and being able to tell each other what we think or feel without the other one getting mad or frustrated. So yeah, it's really helped me to uh, be more reasonable around it. Although interestingly, I've also realised that it's actually a bit of an issue for him. He's got very, very fixed views, and
Mm.
they can stop him. It's almost like money's the most important thing in everything, and I don't think it is.
Mm.
um, so I've come to see recently how fixed his views are, and if things don't fit in with how he would like them to be, he really, really struggles.
Yeah.
Um, So, yeah, it's been an interesting experience to just go through this process of arguing about money to being able to talk about it sensibly and come to an agreement.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then seeing the problems that fixed views cause other people. So
Absolutely. Mm.
maybe I'll be his troublesome Buddha on that front when he realizes it.
That's a great example. Yeah. Yeah. I probably would think that every relationship would have an element of that in there somewhere. When we
Mm,
start to move in together, and are we going to get a joint bank account? Are we not? how we're going to manage finances, who's earning the most, who's earning the, it's just such a rich field of learning and compromise and exploration together, isn't it?
Definitely.
Oh, well, I mean, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. There's some wonderfully inspiring examples of things that are very, very close to home, and something that I think everyone, has members of their family close. We live with them and we love them dearly, yet somehow they can cause us all sorts of frustrations and just with the little tiny things. And it's just like how we can see different ways. So thank you so much for being willing to share your examples and your experience.
It's all right. It's a pleasure.
When we look at the life of the Buddha, we see there are a number of accounts that indicate that he as well encountered various troublesome people, including and maybe especially in his own family. Firstly, there was his father, Suddhodana, the leader of the Shakya state in northern India. When the young Siddhartha was growing up, Suddhodana assumed that he would be taking over from him and become the next leader. He gave Siddhartha a very coddled, pampered upbringing, protecting him from every possible danger or negative aspect of life. When Siddhartha decided he wanted to leave the palace to become a wandering ascetic, basically to find out who he really was, his father refused. Siddhartha had to escape under the cover of darkness without even saying goodbye. I think we can all see how an overprotective parent refusing to let their child follow their dreams for fear of them coming to harm, or in disappointment for them not fulfilling the path that they'd set out for them, as a sign of a true troublesome Buddha. Another troublesome person for the Buddha was his cousin, Devadatta. Devadatta was ordained as a monk along with his brothers and friends, and actually for a time was highly respected in the sangha. And then as Devadatta's practice went on and deepened, he developed certain powers of the mind. Now these powers can be very seductive, and it's said that his intention became corrupted. Maybe in the parlance of Star Wars you could say he went over onto the dark side. His motivation essentially shifted from one of wisdom, enlightenment and compassion to one of developing his supernatural powers. Or at least that's the way he's portrayed. Devadatta attempted to undermine the Buddha on a number of occasions. Once he claimed the Buddha was too old and suggested he take over running the sangha. But it's recorded the Buddha rebuked Devadatta harshly, saying he was not worthy. On hearing this, it seems the sangha questioned how such a harsh response could be justified as right speech, one of the practices of the Eightfold Path. And in response, the Buddha compared his reaction to Devadatta to a small child who had got a pebble in his mouth and was about to swallow it. He suggested the adult would naturally do whatever it took to get the pebble out of the child's mouth, even if it meant drawing blood. Meaning, in Devadatta's case, he thought it was better to speak harshly and potentially hurt his feelings than to let him stay deluded over who was the rightful leader of the sangha. I mean, it's very difficult to read between the lines of these old accounts, but it does sound like even the Buddha may have struggled at some level to stay on top of his emotions and deal with Devadatta in that situation without flipping his lid. I mean, it's also possible that he was just trying his best to respond by being direct and assertive, and that just came across harsh. We don't know. But we do know that ultimately, and rather unfortunately, the Buddha's strong response in this case didn't work. Devadatta became increasingly jealous and actually tried to kill the Buddha on several later occasions. For example, one time he rolled a boulder off a hill, aiming at where the Buddha was walking, and although it didn't kill him, it actually caused him physical harm. And on another occasion, Devadatta intoxicated an elephant and incited it to charge, but the Buddha was thankfully able to pacify it in time. So Devadatta was certainly another deeply troublesome person for the Buddha. And we do get a sense of him kind of trying his best and not necessarily dealing with it in the most compassionate way, or at least it's questioned by the sangha. Was that really harsh words? Were they really necessary? And from that I think we can take some level of solace, that even the Buddha at some level struggled perhaps on certain occasions and had various deeply troublesome people, that when we encounter our own troublesome people, then perhaps we can remember that and say we're not unique, we're not alone in all this. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review and a star rating on whatever platform you use. And do recommend it to others, because we all have difficult people in our lives, and each of them offers us a real opportunity for learning and growth. For more information about my book and what else I offer, head over to my website, markwestmackett.co.uk. Thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.